everyone, and welcome to the Astranti pre-scene analysis for the CIMA operational case study examination for August 2019. And we'll be looking in this video series at the pre-scene given by CIMA for AKL Sparkle. So my name is James and I'll be guiding you through this operational case study pre-scene analysis. So let me just tell you a little bit about myself before we get into it. So I'm the head of case studies at Astranti. I oversee the OCS, MCS and SCS at Astranti, but primarily I am the person that produces the OCS pre-scene analysis, the top 10 issues and the strategic analysis. And I'm also involved in writing the mocks and marking the OCS mocks as well. So I'm very much involved in the operational case study, and I have been for several years now. I know it quite well. I know what the exam contains, what to expect, how to prepare for the exam, and the kind of things that CIMA deliberately put in the pre-scene to set themselves up for exam questions later on. So in addition to being a mock writer and a marker, generally I'm a tutor at Astranti as well. I record and produce tuition videos. I help to write mock exams, not only for case study materials, but also for individual papers such as F1, F2, F3. I've also been part of the production of our study texts, free study texts available at astranti.com. I am on Facebook. If you search for James Nutting Astranti, you'll find my page where I'll be posting plenty of things to do with the operational case study as we lead up to the exams. So this video series has a few different elements. So primarily in this first section, we'll be looking at the pre-scene, and we'll be looking at the pre-scene essentially section by section, page by page, looking at it and analyzing it. And what we're going to be looking for are the key points. What can we draw out of the pre-scene that are key issues? And to do this, we'll be using some models such as a SWOT analysis and PESTLE to help us identify key areas of concern for the company, things to keep in mind going into the exam. We're also going to be taking a look at the wider industry in which the company is a part of, and how that relates to the company, how that informs what they're doing, their position within that industry, limits or predetermines the options available to them within that industry. Relevant business models that come up, so I've already mentioned SWOT and PESTLE. They're going to be useful in doing general analysis of the company, but there might be other models that we might bring in that actually are more relevant to specific exam questions. And that brings us on to the likely exam issues. So as I'm going through the pre-scene analysis, any issues that I see that I know come up regularly, they've come up in the past, or that they don't come up at all, I'll be taking note of that and sort of preparing you for the exam by telling you what is likely to come up, what is likely to not come up. In addition to that, I'll just be giving you some general hints and tips on exam strategy, how to approach the exam and managing your time, and the kind of things to do in questions and planning, and the best way to get good answers that ultimately lead you to passing your exam, hopefully the first time round. Once we've done the pre-scene analysis, and the pre-scene analysis, that is the first 6 videos where we're strictly looking at the pre-scene in depth. You have those 6 videos. And then the next video is the strategic analysis. That's a separate video where we take the rational planning model, which is not actually examinable at operational level, but don't worry about that. It's just a tool we're using to analyze the company and essentially come up with a strategy so that when you go into the exam, you can present ideas and discuss issues that are in alignment with the overall strategy of the company and not things that are completely off track in a strategic sense. We also have the top 10 issues video, and that is pretty much what it sounds like. It is the top 10 issues that I've identified in the exam that are likely to come up, and that'll be 10 key areas, and we'll break those down into depth and give you advice on how to prepare for that particular area, what models are relevant, why it might come up, how often it comes up, those kind of things. So that gives you an overview there of the entire video series available for this sitting.
How is it going to work? What should you expect from the video series? Well, as we've said, I'll be going through the pre-scene section by section. And as I go through, I'm not going to assume any prior knowledge as I progress. As I go through this, I'm learning things for the first time, just as you are. I haven't skimmed through the whole thing. I haven't looked ahead. So I'm discussing things. We're kind of bringing you through this together, and I'll be hopefully imparting some of my knowledge to you. But as we go through, it would be good if you are reading this section yourself and making notes. So for example, as we continue with this first video, if you would like to say read the first 2 or 3 pages, make your own notes, and then come back and watch this video and see what I have to add, what kind of analysis I did that you missed out, and perhaps you might have even got things that I missed too. And if you do that, then feel free to comment or get in touch and get involved on our forums. And as I said, you do your notes of the section, come back to the video, and you'll compare it and see what we go over in my review. And at the end, as I've said, the separate video of the strategic analysis, that's a full strategic analysis. That video itself is usually at least an hour long, and the same again for the top 10 issues. Notes on the pre-scene. So the aim of the pre-scene, and this is an important thing to keep in mind as we go through, think of the pre-scene. Obviously, CIMA have made the pre-scene, and CIMA are the ones writing the exam, and they have their own kind of agenda and the syllabus that they have to test you on. So the pre-scene for them is their opportunity to give you the context for the business so that they can later take that context and give you issues and scenarios. So from your perspective, you can think of it, if you read between the lines and think, okay, CIMA have included this information. Why have they included that? They wouldn't have included it if they didn't need to. So if you think of that as we go through, that will help you when it comes to the exam itself. It's not a good idea to pre-write anything based solely on the pre-scene. So this analysis will be good to give you context. You'll have really good, deep understanding of the company and the industry by the time you're done with this. But the goal or the point of the exam is to deal with issues as they are presented to you. So you shouldn't go into the exam thinking, well, I've basically written out all my answers already. I did the SWOT and I did the PESTLE. So if anything like that comes up, no, wrong. Don't do that. You can use those models, for example, to give you the context and to be prepared. But if something comes up in the unseen, this is to give you the background to deal with unseen issues, not to write your answer before you go in there. So make sure you don't make that mistake. That is not to say that you shouldn't use this on the day of the exam. So this analysis is going to be essential in you getting good marks in your exam. Like I said, it gives you the context, it gives you the background, and you should use it on your exam. But you shouldn't only use that, and you shouldn't think all the work has been done now. You do still have stuff to do on the exam day. And particularly with the strategic analysis, you can make recommendations in the exam that are consistent with our analysis. So going through the pre-scene, the themes that we see come up, the issues that we see come up, the main key points that come up, you can make recommendations that are consistent with that, and that will look good. That will get you good marks. It will show the examiner that you know what you're talking about and you've taken the time to learn about the company. Okay, and with that, let's get back to the pre-scene analysis.
So in this first video then, we'll just be taking a look at the first few pages of the pre-scene. So in video 1, we'll start with the introduction on page 2, and we'll go as far as your role in section 2 up to page 4. So we're looking at pages 2, 3, and 4 in this opening video to give us an overview of the company we're looking at, AKL Sparkle, and we'll also focus on your particular role within this exam, which is going to give you a really good understanding of what will be expected of you, and that will help you to prepare. So let's take a look at these first few pages. Okay, so just scrolling down then. So in the introduction, we start with the very, very basic information. So AKL Sparkle, I think I'll just call them Sparkle because it's too much, it's too long-winded to say AKL Sparkle every time. So Sparkle is a company that designs and manufactures silver beads for bracelets and sells these together with bought-in bracelets to a range of retailers. So let's just stop there for a second. Before we go any further, let's just read that first sentence again and make sure we're getting something from it. So Sparkle, that's the company name, is a company that designs. So let's just start with design. Now, what from our studies in E1, F1 and P1 do you think of when you think about design? What's involved in designing jewelry? So for me, that's design. We're thinking about the kind of staff that are going to be involved in that. That's probably going to take some skill and expertise. And design, of course, is really important, particularly for a company like this who is in the sort of jewelry and fashion industry. Design is what sets you apart from your competitors. So getting the best designers to design good, new, up-to-date styles of jewelry that are going to be appealing to the target demographics, that's going to be really important to keep on board. And it's going to feed into the brand image, and it's kind of the key idea of how customers perceive the company. Another key thing with design then as well, rather than that very sort of practical needed staff to do that kind of thing, how about financial reporting? Design, there's some assets there, isn't there? Maybe we're thinking about copyrights or patents, intellectual property for certain designs, making them unique to this particular country. There might be some accounting for intangible assets required here. Okay, so that's F1 covered. Staff requirements, staffing supply, that's a little bit of E1. Not sure there's much about design coming in from a P1 perspective, but once we move on to manufacturing, of course, that completely opens it up for P1, doesn't it? Because management accounting, that's very closely related to manufacturing. So what things come up with a company that not only designs but manufactures? Well, if we're talking about manufacturing, the key things from P1: costing, budgeting, variance analysis. Okay, so here's how this works. Here's how P1 relates to OCS. If you go into your exam in August and there's any area of costing, budgeting or variance analysis that you don't know very well, you're not going to be able to do a very good job in this exam. This is the key. This is the bread and butter of P1. P1 makes up 50% of the OCS exam. So you're almost certainly going to get a question on one of those three topics. So that absolutely needs to be your priority when you're studying. And now that we know we've got a manufacturing company, it's even more important that you know the different kinds of costing and how different kinds of costing can lead to different results and different measurement techniques. So very important thing to get. Okay, so Sparkle are a company that designs and manufactures silver beads for bracelets. Okay, so let's just look at that for a second. So silver beads, what's the key information there? Well, silver's a commodity. It's a raw material. It's going to be a key input into the company's production process. So that opens up questions relating to E1 with regards to sourcing and your suppliers. So where are we going to get our silver from? How much does it cost us? Do we have a lot of room for negotiation? Is it a highly abundant chemical? Well, it is commodity. It's a tradable commodity, but it's got a unique status because it is used in jewelry and things like that. So it's used as a raw material, not just valued for the sake of it being a rare metal or anything like that. And as we go through, we're going to need to come back to this and think about this and think about, okay, what is the supplier power like in this industry? What is the buyer power like? Are Sparkle in a position where they can get silver for a reasonable price? Have they got good relationships with their suppliers? Is there going to be an opportunity for them in the exam that might come up in the exam where they're looking at changing their supplier strategy? Maybe the costs of production have become too high, and a key way to do that would be to look at reducing the cost of raw materials. These are the kind of scenarios that can form the basis of the exam. So straight away in the very first sentence of the pre-scene, we're already starting to get an idea of the kind of routes the examiner may be going down in your exam in August. So they design and manufacture their silver beads for bracelets. Okay, so that's a key term because it tells us about the industry. We'll learn more about the industry, but bracelets, that tells me this is jewelry, perhaps not just high-end jewelry, but maybe more fashionable, more accessible jewelry that is caters to a wider demographic, a wider audience than the kind of high-end, very expensive jewelry, particularly with silver beads on bracelets. That's the kind of thing that maybe teenagers and younger people might engage in. It's not very, very expensive stuff that only slightly older people with a bit more money are going to be able to buy. Okay, so they design and manufacture silver beads for bracelets. Now, it's just the silver beads they manufacture. From the next line, we see that actually the bracelets are bought in and they are sold. They're sold alongside the beads. So Sparkle make the beads, they buy in bracelets, and they sell those in combination to a range of retailers. So some more key information is coming up here. So they sell these together with bought-in bracelets. So we know they're buying in finished goods. They're not making those bracelets themselves. So maybe there's an opportunity, or at least the possibility of exploring the option of making bracelets in-house. And maybe that's something that's been looked at in the past. Maybe that's something that's in the future. At the moment, they're focusing on the silver beads, but in the future, maybe they want to make their own bracelets too. And we'd have to think about the benefits of doing that. Again, weigh that against the disadvantages of doing that. Okay, so you can see how that might lead into a question about the benefits of in-house versus outsourcing. Again, first couple of lines, we're already starting to get a feel for what kind of exam topics could come up. Okay, so not only the designing and manufacturing, but they also have to have a decent enough purchasing department that can not only get a good price on silver, but also these bought-in bracelets, which seem to be a key part of what the company is selling. And actually, they're selling these bracelets as if they were their own sort of produce. They sell these to a range of retailers, so no mention of end consumers, no mention of having their own shops. So presumably what Sparkle do, they make their stuff in their factory, they ship it off to wholesalers and retailers, and the retailers then sell it to the end consumers. So they're not directly selling to end consumers. So in terms of marketing, there's going to be a mix there. They're obviously going to put a lot of money into marketing their products to end consumers because this is fashion and jewelry, and marketing is very, very important in that particular industry. But also it's they're selling to other businesses rather than to customers. So there's going to be a bit of B2B, business to business marketing going on here too. Okay, so Sparkle is based in Newland, which is obviously a made-up country by CIMA, but it is in the real continent of Asia. So that's important, isn't it? Learning that the company we're dealing with is in a country which is in Asia. So we can presume or make some assumptions about the kind of company that might exist in Asia, what that implies for the company as opposed to it being, say, an American company or a European company or an African company. So we need to sort of remember that it's based in Asia and maybe just keep that in the back of our minds. It's probably not going to be too important because, again, it's a made-up company in a made-up country. Some of it's going to be based on some real-life things. So when CIMA write these pre-scenes, they do tend to base the companies on a couple of different real-life companies. So it being based in Asia, I suppose we'll wait and see whether that becomes more relevant, but it's just something to bear in mind for now. And it has the N dollar as its currency. So Sparkle has been trading since 2005. So that's coming up to 15 years since they first started trading, which is, it's not brand new, obviously. It's not very young, but it's not a very, very long time either. Certainly not long enough to be considered a well-established in the fashion sort of industry. Maybe we'll learn more about that as we go through, but I'd say 15 years is probably still considered to be a fairly new company. Although if there's been big growth in the industry, or if they've carved out a kind of niche or a subsection of the market, then they may be considered to be well established in that particular area. But overall, when it comes to jewelry, that's fairly young. Okay, so here's something very interesting. The founding members were, or are, should I say, a husband and wife team, Chakri and Kim Lee, and they still own and run the company. So here we have the founders, who are the owners and the managers of a company. So straight away here we've identified our two key people, our key stakeholders, who are the owners, managers and founders of the company. And they're the two who set up the company 15 years ago and have grown the company. So if we continue on, growth to date has been rapid, starting as an artisan silversmith. So the husband and wife, they probably just set up their own small workshop. with a few members of staff members of 4 staff members in 2005 to the present day, where they have a large purpose-built factory employing 829 staff. So that's a very large operation now, considering it's only been 15 years and they've gone from, the owners and a couple of members of staff to nearly 1,000 members of staff in a large factory. So that is very, very large growth in the past 15 years. Okay, so what we really want to find out is what has driven that huge growth, whether it was this particular company being very, very successful and unique in the industry and doing well, or whether there was an overall sort of growth in the industry and this is one company of many who has benefited from that. That's perhaps something we'll find out as we go through. Okay, so continuing on, it's in this next paragraph where we learn more about what has happened in this industry in the last 15 years and perhaps have some insight into what has driven this growth. So in the early 2000s, so roughly around when the company was first founded, the jewelry industry saw changes in trends with the demand for silver exceeding gold for the first time. So that's a key point in the development here. So silver, whether or not Chakri and Kim knew about this increased demand, increased popularity of silver and took advantage of it, or whether they were lucky enough to just be part of that first wave of people. Again, we don't know. But either way, an increase in popularity of silver certainly helps any company selling silver beads. In addition to that, it was the emergence of interchangeable jewelry pieces. So 2 key things so far is an increase in the popularity of silver in jewelry and also interchangeable jewelry pieces. So an element of customizability in this kind of jewelry. Okay, and in particular, these silver bracelets onto which differently designed silver beads could be threaded became popular. The idea being that the wearer could collect the beads and change their bracelets to create different looks for different occasions. Keyword there being collect. They've created a sense of collectability in their product, which is massively a good idea because people want to collect all the different things. You think of all the collectibles over time. Just in the last, 20 years or so, there's always a new fad with Pokemon cards or whatever it might be, different games, collecting figures, superhero to do with films. Collectability it sells. And so taking advantage of that has obviously contributed to this rapid growth alongside the popularity of silver and the customizability of the products that Sparkle has to offer. Okay, so collectability, very important for the growth of this company and perhaps the industry as a whole. Next thing is that these collections of different types of beads emerged. So there were different types of things you collect. There, we're basically talking about variety. So not only silver is popular, highly customizable, highly customizable product, highly collectible, but there's a wide variety that kind of goes hand in hand with collectability. You need to have a variety, but the wide variety is more appealing to a wider demographic of people. So another key part of the growth is the variety of products and the variety of beads that have been on offer. Okay, continuing on, by the mid-2000s, the silver beads available in the market tended to be of the highest quality. So again, the key thing, another key thing there is that it's not just cheap throwaway stuff. It's high quality that lasts and endures. So people can really invest in this. They're going to try and collect lots of different things, a wide variety of different beads for them to get. They're customizable. You can kind of express yourself through your own particular bracelet and the different beads you buy. Silver is very popular, so you're going to be fashionable. And on top of that, you've invested in something high quality that maybe will last you for the next 10, 15, 20 years because it's built to last and it's not cheap, low quality stuff that's meant to be thrown away within a few months or few years. Okay, and then the last point here, prices ranging from $15 to $100 per bead. So that's a wide range of different prices there. depending on where the precious stones were added. So another feature of this industry that's made it successful is to have this variety of price, or what you might call value for money. The more you're willing to pay, the more you're going to get, but you can still pay slightly less and get slightly less. Okay, so there's some really important key information for us here. This sort of list of 6 things here, the combination of these 6 things is what is going to determine how successful a company is going to be in this particular industry. So some of these things can be controlled, some of these things cannot be. So the popularity of silver, that's kind of up for individuals to design, for influencers, and the fashion, that fashion has changed. Something might overtake silver and be more popular. And so that's something to think about for a company in this industry, whether or not silver is popular enough and will remain popular enough for the foreseeable future. The other things tend to be can have more control over them. So customizability, having lots of different beads that you can buy in different styles, lots of varieties, having that collectability, so having a wide range of products that are well advertised, marketed well, that people want to have them. Quality is obviously something that a company can have a lot of control over. Value for money, that comes into pricing as well. So the only thing really there that's slightly worrying is how much can we rely on silver being popular for the foreseeable future. Okay, and this list, by the way, it's more of a description of the industry and what drove the growth in the industry. It's not necessarily the case that Sparkle does all of these things. So we'll learn more about Sparkle in the next paragraph. So in 2005, the year that the company was founded, the owners saw a gap in the market for mid-quality. Okay, so kind of trying to find that midpoint between low quality and high quality. You're pricing yourself in the middle. For those who have a bit more money, they want to spend a bit more on something good quality, but they can't afford the top end stuff that's perhaps going to cost a lot. It's way out of their price range. So they saw a gap in the market. They went for it, and they made more affordable silver beads that could be targeted at people 17 to 30 age range. So I suppose you would call that the millennial age range. Certainly that would be millennial in today in 2019. Obviously back in 2005 it wouldn't have been millennial. So that's just a thought or a consideration about the kind of marketing approach you might have. You need to cater to the generation. So if we know specific or millennials have certain traits and we're looking to attract millennials, then that's something to bear in mind with the marketing strategy. Okay, so Sparkle launched its first range of beads, and they were for $8 per bead. Now the prices up here ranged from 15 to 100, so we can assume this 15, that's actually quite expensive still, given that $8 is supposed to be the mid quality, the mid range. So presumably you could get some very, very cheap ones, maybe for $2, $3, $4. This is the mid range for $8 each. The price point low enough to be attractive to this target market, the 17 to 30 age range, and to encourage regular purchase of new beads. And that links back to this idea of collectability. So getting people to come back and keep buying more because it's a highly customizable thing. And you might think you want slightly different beads on your bracelet. As you change, as you grow up over time, your tastes change. So you don't have to get rid of the bracelet. Maybe you just change a few of the beads and you like it more because it reflects who you are as a person as you've changed and got older and all that sort of stuff. Okay, another key piece of information about demographics here is that although the bracelets were originally intended to appeal to females, a significant proportion of the products purchased are worn by males. So that's significant, not purchased by males to give to their wives and girlfriends. They are worn by males as well. So there's obviously an element of this being attractive to both men and women, even though it may have been intended to be for females to start with. And so that's certainly something that should be factored in to considerations about target markets, about the advertising and the marketing strategy, whether you want to keep it as a unisex kind of line that appeals to both, or whether there's an opportunity there to develop a specific male line that maybe has more masculine or typically male beads or a male style, and that is separate from female style. But then there's the question of cannibalizing your sales, so separating ranges. You might not actually increase sales at all. You might actually put some people off. So there's some real considerations there. Now, that's more of a strategic consideration. That's not something you'll necessarily be asked to do in the operational case study exam. But what you might be asked to do is to do some sort of management accounting or financial reporting relating to that kind of a scenario. So the managers or the directors are thinking about starting a new range targeted at men, and you might have a question relating to, I don't know, some specific marketing aspect of that, or you might have to look at some numbers relating to how a marketing campaign is going to be funded for that. So that's how these kind of big ideas are filtered down at the operational level.
So just before we finish, I'd like to take you through some of the products we offer in the entire case study course. So this is just one element of the whole course, and I'll just go through the other things that we offer here. So to start with, we have a study text that is devoted to the operational case study, and that's split into two parts. The first part is a guide to how to pass the case study exam. It's full of exam tips, exam strategy, time management, preparation and planning, how to write to the marking criteria, all those kinds of things. And then part two of that study text is a condensed version of all the relevant material of the kind of things that come up in the exam over and over. So essentially it's the most popular topics that have come up in past exams from E1, P1 and F1. And so those are the two study texts available for the operational case study course. And we also do course videos that are roughly based around that first study text. So the exam advice and the timing, the planning, all the things that go in to preparing an exam strategy. We have an entire series of videos that go through that in detail. So if you're more of a visual learner rather than a reader, you can check those out, and they'll be a great help in getting you past the exams. The pre-scene analysis is the series of 6 videos where we look through the actual pre-scene in minute detail, going through every paragraph, making notes and looking how we can use this information to better prepare for the exam when the exam comes up. Separate from that is an industry analysis, and that is a document and a video as well. So the two are in tandem, and the document is about 100 pages looking at the industry in which the company exists. So for example, if the case company is in the car and they're a car manufacturer, then the industry analysis would be an analysis of the car industry. And that's like I say, that's a large document where we break it down, and we're essentially, the point of that is we're doing the research for you to save you time and energy. And the really great thing about the industry analysis is that we include 25 industry examples at the end. So things that happened in the real industry. So the example I just used, it being the car industry. If we were doing the car industry, we'd take 25 examples from the car industry of relevant news and things that have happened to companies and to the industry and consumers or whatever it is. As when we get from those 25 examples, we write a little exam paragraph, the kind of thing that you can literally rehearse and put it in your exam if it's relevant. Examiners do like to see that you have a wider industry knowledge, and so putting in a little example like that can get you good marks. We do mock exams. For the operational case study, we write 3 mock exams, and we have a free mini mock that you can do that are based on the actual CIMA style case study. So they're computer based, they're online, and they're timed, and it's as close to the real thing as we can possibly make it. And that's a really good way to prepare you for the exam. Each time we write our questions based on the pre-scene that's just been released. And with those mock exams, you can get marking and feedback, and that's really essential for you to, if you do your mock exams, I would recommend also getting marking and feedback, because you can then see where you went wrong or what you did well. And the feedback allows you to improve on that. Really important part that a lot of students skip over, and they really struggle in the exam because they weren't prepared, they hadn't done the mock exams. We have masterclasses that run over a course of 2 separate weekends, running up to the exam, and they're essentially a live online class webinar where our tutor will go through with you the kind of a revision one where we're recapping on the most important topics from the E1, P1 and F1 syllabus, and one will be sort of more exam focused. And then finally, we offer pass guarantee, which means that if you meet all the requirements, so you use all these different products that are available, and you fill in a checklist to say that you've done those, but you still don't pass your exam, you're unfortunate or whatever, then we will allow you to resit our course, to take our course again at no extra charge. That's really great for people who are perhaps taking it for the first time and they don't quite pass, but they need to take the course again. If you've gone through that scheme and you've done everything that we ask you to do, then we'll give you the course again for free. So if you found that video helpful, remember to like and subscribe on YouTube to make sure you're getting all the latest Astranti updates. And you can also find us on other social media platforms. We are on Twitter and on Instagram, and you can find us on Facebook in a number of different places. We have groups for operational strategic management case studies. So have a look on Facebook and see if you can find the right group for you.